Welcome to the programme, Jacob Rees-Mogg. What do you make of those demonstrations, tens of thousands of people in London?
Well, it's a free country. People are entitled to demonstrate.
OK, good. Now, you're famous for being an impeccably polite and cultured man. Do you think that Donald Trump's interview with the Sun was impeccably polite and the right thing to do as a guest in this country?
Well, he wasn't a guest in the country at the point. He was coming here.
Well,
and
he was on his way here.
He was asked a very straightforward question about... He was on his way here. He was asked a question about trade, and what he said is completely consistent with what the government's put in its white paper. You just need to look at page 49, paragraph 163, which says, in the context of trade negotiations, a common rule book for goods would limit the UK's ability to make changes to regulation in those areas covered by the rule book. And as non-tariff barriers are nowadays more important than tariff barriers, this will make trade deals with countries like the United States, but others beyond, extremely difficult. Right. So Donald Trump was speaking the truth, and that's very important.
So when it comes to Brexit, the existential issue of our time, you agree with Donald Trump?
On trade, the government agrees with Donald Trump. It's in its white paper.
And do you think it was right for him to praise Boris Johnson as a wonderful Prime Minister? That's a bit rude, isn't it, to Theresa May?
Why is that? Why is that rude? He was asked what he thought about Boris Johnson, and he said he thought Boris Johnson was absolutely marvellous. He wasn't asked what he thought about Jeremy Corbyn. He may have said he thought Jeremy Corbyn was a splendid fellow too. I think you're completely entitled to praise people. And look what he said about Mrs May at Chequers, how wonderful he thinks she is, how admirable and how successful. So he's praising everybody. He's a very generous man with his praise.
And when he was praising Theresa May at Chequers, do you actually believe him? I mean, he seems to be changing his mind quite a lot about people. He did the same thing with Angela Merkel. He was very rude about her on Twitter and in interviews, and then he was very nice to her in person. That seems to be a bit of form there, doesn't it?
Well, I think he is a man who wants to put the interests of his country first and is tough in the way he negotiates and discusses things with other nations. But personally, he's very polite about people. And the Chequers news conference was an example of his good manners.
But this is a country that's divided about Brexit, and you in a party that's deeply divided about what kind of Brexit it wants. So are you happy to be behind the Donald Trump version of Brexit rather than the Prime Minister's version of Brexit?
Well, as I said, the Donald Trump version of Brexit is what the government has put out in its white paper. Now, Downing Street may be spinning something else, but that something else simply isn't right. That if you leave non-tariff barriers in place, it will be difficult to do trade deals. That's a fact. That's in the white paper. The government has accepted it. And if we're in the common rule book, which is in fact the EU's rule book, we will have the EU making our rules and effectively determining our ability to do trade deals. And that isn't Brexit. And whatever spin comes out of Downing Street, it still won't make it Brexit.
There were quite a few members of your own party today who said to Donald Trump, can you please leave us alone, don't meddle in our politics, butt out. Obviously, you don't agree with them.
Well, I think it's silly to be discourteous to Donald Trump, who is our closest ally and a very important global figure with a democratic mandate from the United States of America. And there are some people, and you had that lawyer on a moment ago being interviewed by Jon Snow, who are very sniffy about Americans voting. And I trust American democracy, so I think we must be respectful to the American president. And he's not interfering in our affairs. When Obama came here, he was coming during an election period and interfered directly. What Donald Trump has said is how America will react in terms of negotiating a trade deal if the UK is tied into the EU's rulebook. That's a matter of American foreign policy.
First of all, Trump has come at an incredibly delicate time. The Foreign Secretary resigned on Monday. You could say this is a government in crisis. We may not have an election, but we are in a very perilous state. And at the same time, when Obama was here, you accused him of meddling.
Obama was coming during an election campaign and was putting out a campaign line written for him by Downing Street, which was a pretty shameful thing to do. The fact that this government has had a bit of a wobble this week is hardly Donald Trump's fault. We're not in an election period, and he has spoken about American foreign policy, about how America will do trade deals.
He's come here to trample all over our rather delicate politics at the moment.
Well, he's not trampling all over it. He's asked, will America do a trade deal if the UK is stuck with the European Union's rulebook, to which the answer is probably not. That's just a straight answer to a straight question about American interest. That's not interfering in British politics, and the recent instability in British politics can hardly fairly be blamed on Donald Trump. He may be responsible for many things, but not the resignation of Boris Johnson and David Davis. That was because of this awful white paper.
Are you more loyal to Donald Trump than you are to Britain?
Sorry?
Are you more loyal to Donald Trump than you are to Britain?
Oh, don't be silly. No, of course my loyalty is to the Queen and to the country. May she reign over us for many years to come. It's the first time anyone's probably said God save the Queen on Channel 4 News. Thank you.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, thank you very much indeed.